Go. Okay, fabulous. So I have Patricia Love here with me today. And I am so excited to speak with you. I was reading through your bio and looking through your book and your Facebook and your Instagram. And I just love everything that you embody and everything that you've gone through and the way that you've been able to turn it around into something positive, not only for yourself, but to share that for others. Right. And, I think so many times we get wrapped up in like all of these things that are happening to us and, oh my gosh, why does this keep happening to me? And poor me. And nothing goes right. And you just kind of wallow in that. And kind of like, even a little bit later in the game, you were able to flip that around and say, no, I'm not going to, right? I'm not going to succumb to this. I'm not just going to accept this as my life. And I'm going to make some changes. And clearly you've done that, and you've done that successfully, which is amazing. So I'm really happy to talk to you. I think that you can provide just such value to our listeners and, to anyone really who is just kind of stuck and doesn't think that they can make those changes, to really empower them to do so. And I know that you've recently written a book as well, which you are #1 bestseller in 8 different categories.
Yes, thank you.
So congrats. That's exciting. What inspired you to write a book?
Well, it's interesting. I've had this book in the back of my mind for many, many years. And how it's like any writer, I think sometimes they write things and then they put it away. And I think you just have to be ready. And because for me, this was a memoir. So this was really all telling my life, kind of, in most cases, just about all of it. I probably have another book in me regarding that, but it was putting it out there and not being afraid, that fear that like, oh my God, I can't take it back once I do it. This is like social media kind of thing, it's out there for the whole world to see. And I think it took me at this point to last year to be on that particular journey, to let it go. And once I did, it was like, oh my God, I should have done this years ago. But, sometimes it just wasn't the timing, I believe, in my own heart that wasn't right. But once I did it and wrote it, because it was very emotional to write, because you think, we think we heal, but I don't think we ever really totally heal. We just learn how to manage things better, and we move forward and we learn about ourselves more, because honestly, our journey is forever. It's never stopping. And if anybody kind of thinks that, well, oh yeah, she's got it all now. No, it's just constantly changing and evolving and pivoting and shifting. So, but when I put it out, it was like, okay, I feel good about this. Now I can have a platform to help other women truly, even though I've been coaching for years, really put that platform out there saying that, hey, I've been there. You can get the confidence too. You can do this, and you can do it at any age, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60s. And, and I just want people to know that you're nothing, don't let anything stop you. But it was important for me to get out there and get the confidence out to women, because right now I see, as much as you think it's really much better, it's not. I think it's worse, the confidence of women, because there's just the bombardment of everything that I think it's important that everybody try to empower women and help them get through these things, because there's a lot of stuff out there that it's a mess. It's messed up, bottom line.
What makes you think that it's worse?
I think it's because of the social media. I think that as much as I adore and love social media and technology and all that stuff, it has its way back drawbacks, because it's showing women that there's all these people out there, they're comparing themselves to everybody. And these women are saying, oh, I'm not as pretty as that, or I'm not as successful as that. I can't make as much money as that. Where in reality, if we didn't have that comparison, which we didn't have that way back in the day so much. And so you kind of felt you're on your little bit of your own island in some ways, and you could just move forward and like, okay, I'll just do this and I'll do that. I mean, there were different things, obviously, but today it's instant. And so you get that either instant gratification or that instant hatred. And and if you don't have the confidence and you don't have that internal feeling of that I'm good enough, it can tear you apart. And I see it every single day, especially with young women coming up. As strong as they may be, negative vibes really infiltrate the body even more than positive vibes do. And we just need more positive vibes to get out there.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because years ago, before social media, maybe you compared yourself to your neighbor or your friend or, another parent or someone in a magazine. And maybe there were 5 people, where you might get stuck in the comparison trap. But now it's 5 million. There's a million.
That's exactly right. I mean, I remember, and mainly it was the magazines especially for women, for images.
Yeah.
I mean, mine was Twiggy, way back in the day, like, oh, I got to be skinny like Twiggy, and so but there wasn't as many.
Right.
And so, but today we're bombarded on a regular basis. And so it's really, if we could get to the point, which it's very difficult, but of learning to not compare ourselves, but you have to be strong from within to be strong enough not to compare yourself. Because when you get hit with it, you have to be able to say, oh, well, that's them. That's not me. That's not my jam,
Yeah, that's so true. And you had an interesting quote that it really stuck out to me, and it kind of, lends itself to that same point, that being successful is so much more than rising through the ranks or earning the big bucks. So I think so many people want to put out this perception that they're successful based on what society says successful looks like, without ever thinking about what does success actually look and feel like to me in my own life. And I think that's so important that you mentioned that, because living a life that you love, having a wonderful, wonderful people to share it with. I know personally, it took me way too long to figure that out. So all through my, 20s and 30s, I thought it was go to college, get a degree, get a, corporate job, make a lot of money, get bonuses, have a BlackBerry, like all the, a Chanel bag, Louboutin shoes, live in Brownstone and Rittenhouse Park. And there was nothing left inside. Like I wasn't cultivating any of the things that actually matter. I was shopping too much. I was drinking too much. I was binge eating, and I was miserable.
You sound like me.
Maybe it was a connection. So, I think both of us, we've learned this the hard way and want to at least try to step in a little bit sooner so that other women don't have to take as long as we did maybe to figure this out. So I love
that would be the goal. Because honestly, at 57, when I was 57, because I'm way past that now, most people would be saying, oh, I can't change. I'm too old. I should be retiring. But in reality, you're just living. You got to learn to just live day to day, because you don't know how long you're going to live. You could live another 50 years. I mean, with everything, with all the stuff going on, I could live to 150 pretty soon. I mean, who knows, so we got to kind of get out of that headspace type of thing. But can you imagine if there was no comparison, if there was no trying to get to the next level, how happy there would be? There would be so many more happy people, because you can see some people who live basically from being, hardly any money. And they're the happiest people in the world.
Yeah.
Yet there's other people that are striving for this, and this, and they're not happy at all.
Right.
And so they got to see that, but it's hard. And I'll give it to, it was hard for me. I mean, come on, when you're 20s and your 30s, you're like, oh, I can do this, and I can do that. I'm all that, your ego's like way up here. And so I get it. I totally get it. But if there's ways to not just one person or 2 people like you and I trying to suggest, if there were more people, and maybe more men also, to step in and show us that, you're fabulous, you're great just the way you are, rather than being conditioned every single day to live our lives through, unfortunately, men's eyes, which is what it's been like for 50, 60 years. Because, and again, nothing against men, I love men, but we're conditioned to live through their images, their advertising. And so we need more women to kind of step up. We need more men to step up and say, hey, that's not right. I was just seeing something on Good Morning America today, where Sex and the City's come back on, right? And of course, they're all older.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess they've been getting like hate mail, like you're too old for this, you've got wrinkles, and we got to really learn to celebrate maturing.
Yeah.
And because that plays a part in your confidence and comparison. and where you can end up being broken because you're striving for all of this. And if you don't get there, you think you failed, not only yourself, but the world.
Yeah. I think so much of the
Here comes the
backlash.
sunshine. Sorry about this.
Finally, you got sunshine, right?
Oh my God, I hope it doesn't blind you. Oh my God.
It looks so nice.
You know,
I think
right?
a lot of the backlash with Sex in the City too is that it forces other people to look at their own age and their own mortality. I know for me, I was telling my husband, it's making me sad. Like, this is making me sad watching this, not because of what was happening in the show, literally, but because oh my gosh, if this is where they are in their life, then I've also aged so much. And so I think it forces you to kind of take a look at yourself and are you happy with where you are? And I know for me, I think that was kind of where I was like it triggered me and I had to think about why, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because we don't see ourselves aging.
Yeah.
You know, until we see a picture.
Yeah.
You know, of 10 years ago, like, whoa, oh
when did that happen?
you know, what's that all about? You know, and you don't really think about it. And it's just something, and that's what learning to more about yourself and understanding who you are, what you are, acknowledging your negatives and your positives, can work yourself through that. So you can really enjoy life rather than just living life to the next day to, you know, get the new purse and get the new this and get the new that. And boy, if you could learn this earlier, and if people would enforce this, you know, in a positive way, people would live their lives longer in such a better way.
Yeah.
And that's my hope, you know, is to, and I believe in, you know, you change one person, that person can change another one, because again, sometimes they'll pay it forward type of thing. So that's one of my goals.
Amazing. So take us back to the beginning. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? Did you tell me that you grew up in Seattle? So do you need to move out of the sun?
I was gonna, you know, I've never seen so much sunshine. You know, it's interesting. You know, it's going to be hard for me to get out of it because just FYI, I about 3-4 years ago, it'll go away. Trust me. I live on a boat now in Seattle, like a floating home.
How cool.
And so that's another talk, I guess, okay. But it's so I don't have the spaces to go from, you know, one room to the other as quickly.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Anyway, but yes, actually I was born in Spokane, Washington, but I actually moved over there. Oh, I brought the parents with me at 5. And so I grew up in the Seattle area. And how was my childhood? I would have to say, well, first off, I'm the youngest of 3 kids. So, and when I say the youngest, there was probably about 8 years between my brother and I, and 10 years between my sister and I. So I was kind of brought up as an only child in a lot of ways. And so actually I was lonely because my mom was an alcoholic. My dad was emotionally unavailable. He just didn't know how to love. And the best example I can give you on that is his birthday cards to me were happy birthday, Patty, Mr. Jack M. Love. Not I love you, Dad, Mr. Jack M. Love. So that's just the way he learned, because as children, we learn what we live. Mm-hmm. And you don't know really any different. So when I say I was lonely, I look back and realize that I was lonely. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I just learned to have imaginary friends, and I learned how to do things, and I would learn to fend for myself. And I thought that all the families were like this, you know, until you see other kids' parents and you go over theirs and they may be more huggy and loving and caring. And you're kind of like, well, I don't, you know, it's kind of like you tilt your head type of thing, but you don't really understand it at that age. And, and where it really starts to take effect though, which is where I believe that, you know, the foundation for kids have got to be at the beginning, you know, where there's the love and the encouragement and the confidence built, because that's your foundation. Otherwise, a lot of that will turn into rebellion in your teens, because you are finding out now about love and boyfriends and different things, and you don't know how to get it because you never had it. Right. And you were always on your own. The one savior that I had was my sister, who again was 10 years older than myself. She kind of took me under her wing and did much what she could for her own age, because she wasn't a parent, you know, but she also knew probably what I was going through, even though we never really deeply discussed it, but it was always that interaction. So she was always kind of hovering to make sure I was safe as much as possible. So, but it turns into rebellion, lack of love, looking for love in all the wrong places, and searching and not having that foundation, even about money, about love, about what to expect in life, not encouraged or inspired to be or do anything. So you don't have these aspirations like a lot of people do. And it's interesting when I look back in my high school, you have the high school book, right? What do you call it?
Yearbook.
That's it. That there's always that question that says, what do you want to be? Or, and you want to grow up or whatever. And mine wasn't a nurse, or it wasn't, a veterinarian, or married with 5 children. It was to find that certain someone that will understand me. Aww. So interesting enough, at 17, I had a lot more introspection than I actually thought I did. Because I knew that there was something missing. So that was kind of my childhood growing up, and which led to me in my 20s, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, pretty much.
Yeah. I think it's, I'm sure you look back now and you're like, well, that there was no other option, kind of with the way that you grew up, you kind of have to go through that to be able to come back and find yourself.
Well, you have to go through the non-blame game, because it's really easy to play the victim, right? It's really easy. Well, my mom was an alcoholic, so it's her fault, or my dad didn't show me love. And there was a portion of that when growing up, that, there was that anger a little bit in that, because I really didn't understand everything until, I started really understanding me, which took a long time. But I've always been, I want to say there were periods of greatness, and, so there were times when was very introspective, and I'd look through things, and then it would be like, I'd go on to the next thing, type of thing. But it was just, I'm just trying to find it and keep it consistent, to be honest. But it's just interesting how parents, and you have to, like I said, not play the blame game. They did what they knew what to do. And at that time in life, 50s, 60s, and they were growing up in the 30s and whatever, they just did what their parents did.
Right.
So so you can't blame them. They have their own story. And that's why I always am kind of preaching to other people. And it's like, look at, you have your story, and so do other people. So let's don't judge people so quickly until we know why they may be acting that way. There's always a reason. Typically. Yeah.
So true. And it's always that idea of keeping your side of the street clean. You can control what you can control, and
it's right.
You should focus and prioritize.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you then kind of, created a life that looked successful, felt successful for a period of time. You were working, and you were, in a relationship, and then you got to a place where everything kind of fell apart. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I was always, it's interesting. I like to call it a mask. I would put a mask on, because when I was growing up, my dad was a salesperson, and to try and get his attention and his love, I'd always try to figure out ways to get that. And one of the things was that because he was in sales, I picked up a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill that he had in his office. And I started understanding how to manipulate, you might say, him into what I wanted. So when I started to negotiate with him, he actually liked that kind of thing. So I kind of grew into the salesperson, because I didn't have any background as far as I dropped out of college. I didn't have any, bachelorette or any kind of business sense. I didn't understand anything. So the only thing I knew to do was to smile and move forward and try and sell. So I was always really good at making money, but I was really good at spending it. So that was one of my downfalls, because if I had, but I didn't understand it. I just kind of always thought money grew on trees, right? Isn't that where, or that, or if I had a big bill, I could actually just make more money,
Right.
So my thinking wasn't quite there. Again, I was kind of always looking for love in the wrong places. I was married once, and then that didn't, I was called what you call a runner, because when things didn't go well and the picket fence started to fall down, the white picket fence, I'd be like, I'm out of here. This isn't good. I don't understand this, Yet I would go for these people that I was just looking for love and so much. So the reason I bring that up is that this all evolves into, to the point when I got into my 50s, that things were continually repeating themselves. So basically all my behaviors are repeating themselves. And what happens when you do that? You get the same results. Right. So one day it's for me, and I want to say I consider it being lucky now, because everything came to a head at once.
Yeah.
And because maybe if one thing had happened, and then 2 years later, another thing happened, maybe a different story. Yeah. But the bottom line is the real estate business kind of took a dive because it was the recession hit. And even though I was really a successful real estate agent, like I said, I was really good at spending it. And I was at that down point with the bills, of $140,000 in debt, drinking too much because I wasn't an alcoholic, but I just drank too much, and I had put on an extra, 40 pounds. My, my husband at the time, this is my second husband, apparently found somebody else and left me, for somebody younger. And so everything kind of just started to fall apart. And one night I was having a second martini and it was like, I can't go on. I can't do this anymore. And this is when I mentioned earlier that throughout my life, there was always, I felt spurts of greatness, spurts of like, you can do these things, you can do that. And I wanted to really just grab onto that feeling for a second. But I was at the point where I wasn't going to kill myself, but I was at the point where I just didn't care, but I have this cat, and I'm just mentioning the cat real quickly here, Hula, who's passed away now, but she had always been very soulful, and animals are very instinctive. They're very soulful. And my sister also had passed away many years prior. So she had passed away when I was like in my 20s. So I had to start realizing that I had to make some changes. But at that point in September 2009, I was like, I can't go on. Well, I was on the floor crying, broke, everything was happening to me. And my cat, Hula, I felt this little paw on my hand, and I'm like, oh my God, what's that? I turn, and there's my cat, who's got the biggest eyes you would not believe in the world. And she's just looking at me. And I swear to God, I don't know, I'm spiritual, but I swear I heard her say, don't give up, Mom. You've got to keep going. And there was this energy that just started coming up through my feet, through my legs, through my hands, through everything, my body. It was a feeling of heat. And I just felt I needed to go on. And this little cat was telling me, you need to go on. I love you. And maybe she was saying, you need to take care of me. I'm not sure what it was.
I'm hungry.
And even at that point, I had 5 words come into my mind. And those 5 words, and I didn't even know what they were, understand them at the time, but I wrote them down, which was acknowledge, forgiveness, mindset, accountability, and perseverance. I had no idea what I was doing. I just wrote them down, and I figured I'll think about it later. But for that moment, I knew that I had a problem. I had to quit drinking. I had to stop drinking. I had to really access my own internal feelings, because everything I kept doing, I kept getting the same result. And I was wise enough to understand that. I was like, I keep doing the same thing and I'm getting all the same results.
Right.
And I hadn't even seen that quote yet. And it was interesting. And so I'm like, so that day or that night, I changed my life. And now, did I have some setbacks? Of course, because, you go 3 steps forward and like a step back and things like that. But my goal was to move forward, because honestly, I had no money and I was so broke. I didn't know if I would have a roof over my head in about a month. So I was having to sell everything I could get my hands on, because I had to acknowledge that and open the bills. That was the start. But I had to acknowledge my own faults before I could move forward. And that was the start of it. And I haven't stopped since. Again, we're always on a journey. We're always learning. And that's why I always say I'll be learning till the day I die, because if I'm not learning, I'm dead.
Right.
And it's important for growth and understanding. And I'm in a lot of ways, I'm blessed that this happened to me. I don't think I would change a whole lot, because that was my life, and there was a reason those things happened to you, but I'm still very fortunate. I got a roof over my head. I have another place in California. I mean, in Arizona. I'm very, very lucky. Have I worked hard? Heck yeah.
Yeah.
But it's worth it,
Yeah.
and I'm not comparing myself to anybody anymore, which is even better.
Yeah. It gives you the freedom to just keep
It gives me the freedom and the peace, because I feel now at peace every night when I go to sleep, rather than like, oh, I got to do this, I have to do that. Yes, you have some things you need to do because you're responsible, right? But I don't need to be anything else than what I am right at this moment, as long as I'm happy.
Yeah.
And that's the key. And it's funny when you become that way, more things open up.
Right. It's that abundance, living in your highest self-worth.
Exactly. And not living in lack of all the time, which I was always here's the interesting thing is, and my second husband, and probably my first husband, would have said this, that I told him this. I was always scared of being a bag lady. Well, guess what? I almost was.
Right.
So literally, it's what you manifest. You got to be careful. And the only reason I believe that is because I manifested my first husband. Because everybody would say, because I knew him when he was like 16, and I was like, we were young, and we won't go into that story completely, but I just always thought I'd marry him. But he ended up going off to college. I was still in high school. He ended up with somebody else. Down the line in my 20s, people would say, why don't you get married to so-and-so? And I go, because I'm going to marry this guy, and they go, well, he's married now. Like, oh, things change.
Right.
And it was like, it's going to happen. Yeah. There's no question. Well, and that did happen, because I ended up meeting him and marrying him. And he was my first husband, but, and that, again, that's another book, but it's interesting that you've got to be careful about what you think about, because you bring it about.
Yeah.
And so you learning how not to think about the negative things in your life, and think about what you do have rather than what you don't have, because I have so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. I've noticed I definitely resonate with that, and that scarcity mindset, and that's held me back in a lot of ways. And that's something I'm working on. And that's where the overspending comes in, and just that, like, binging everything. I binge everything when I get my hands on it. Like, I have to, because I'm not going to have enough, or it's not going to come back, or whatever. So I'm very self-aware, working on that. But I think, when you kind of just dwell on that, lack of money, lack of love, lack of friendship,
lack of anything. Yeah.
You have less and less. And in the moments where I had the least, for some reason, I always felt called to, in some way, give it away, whether it was to like a homeless person with my last $10 in LA or something. And within hours, it would come back to me, like, at least in double. And I just knew I would just do it. I'm just going to spend this, because I know it's going to come back to me, and it always does. It's so interesting.
It's very interesting, but we need to understand that. And so many people are like, it doesn't work, and so they're scared. They're fearful. They're so fearful. But when you do give, it does come back. And whether it's universe, because I believe in energy. Yeah. I believe that because we are all made up of energy. Bottom line, we're electrifying, energy, even in this computers, energy is going to you. I mean, it's all little electrons and whatever it is, but it's, so I believe that, I find it so interesting. And when I coach, I try to help get people to understand, or women to understand that, when you go into a party and you walk in and you feel this negative energy, right? Well, people feel it. It's their gut, right? They feel it. That's what I want people to hold in themselves. Like, feel the energy. If it's bad, is it good? And then acknowledge it. And when you can do that, that's when you start really growing and realizing, how energy does work.
And that you can trust yourself.
Well, and that's the other thing, because trusting your gut is so important. I mean, it's your instinct. How many times do we feel it? Like, the first thing will be like, oh no, I shouldn't do it. Then, of course, the brain starts going, well, why not? Well, because of this. Well, because of this. And you're overthinking. Now you're overwhelmed, you know, and then you almost forget about the gut. But the gut said this. Oh, but I don't know. So I now go with the gut. If my gut says no, I'm out of there, you know.
Anytime I have not listened to my gut, I've always been like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that. Or I knew I should have done this. I should have just listened to myself.
I know, right? And it's amazing that we repeat it over and over. And what's so cool is you can get to the point, like when you hit that gut, it's like, and because you start feeling it going up to your brain and going, just a few questions, you're like, nope, let's go back down. Let's go back to the gut, please, before I start overwhelming it myself, causing myself anxiety, stress, fear, and everything.
Yeah. So when you were on the floor, just kind of at your wit's end, and these 5 words popped into your mind. Those are now your 5 diamonds, correct?
Yes,
so you've created a little bit of a structure around this. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you use those to kind of build that confidence and how you coach women in that regard?
Sure. And one of the reasons I called it the 5 diamonds is because diamonds are strong and they're created under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And
love that.
And they can be polished up and shine. And that's, I always believe that we're all just diamonds in the rough type of thing in most cases. And we just need to be shined up and keep, you know, because they're natural. Real diamonds are natural. But so that's one of the reasons I called it that. But the 5 words, these are words that I actually live by every single day. Now, when I first started these words, and once I finally figured out what they were about, which took a little bit, because I'm like, what is this? You know, what is this word? Acknowledge. Oh, maybe I need to acknowledge that I'm not so awesome, you know, or that I'm not so. And when I say that, I'm not trying to, you know, be negative about myself. It's like, I'm flawed.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. And also diamonds are not perfect either, right? They're flawed. But I had to acknowledge my negatives. I had to get honest with myself. I had to go deep because most people don't want to acknowledge their own personal flaws or their personal negatives, because that's like, what do you mean there's something wrong with me?
Right.
They think there's something wrong with you. It's just that you have to go deep like that in order to move forward, because once you acknowledge things, you can start to fix them or work on them. It's like the money, for an example, the bills. I had to acknowledge I wasn't opening the bills. Well, if I don't open the bills, I don't know what I owe and I can't move forward. And so I was just putting my head in the sand. And that's what a lot of people do. It'll just go away. Well, usually it doesn't go away, but I had to acknowledge that. So for women, it's important to acknowledge that, okay, so maybe I did play a part in that bad relationship. Or maybe I have been judgmental. Maybe, I mean, there's all kinds of things you can acknowledge. Maybe I haven't been the greatest mother because of such and such. And I asked people, what I did is I wrote down all the things that I felt I needed to acknowledge about myself in order to move forward, because that was my starting point. I had to do that. And it's not easy. And there was a lot of crying going on. I mean, it's very emotional because you actually start realizing it. Oh my God, I am not perfect. I played a part in my life in what I'm doing. And it really, when that acknowledgement truly comes to heart, you start realizing it. Wow. Now, if I can change these things, maybe I can move forward. And that's the beauty of it, because there's amazing when you do acknowledge things that maybe you're not quite so perfect. It's almost like a relief.
Yeah.
That comes off you and like, you know what? Okay. Now I'm gonna take care of that one. We're gonna work on this one. And you don't work on it all at once, right? You have to kind of piece things. But now that you've acknowledged, at least you can move forward. The second one being forgiveness is I had to forgive everybody I felt that maybe did me wrong or whatever it might be. And that included rapes, because I was raped twice in my 20s. I had to forgive that. I had to forgive my father. I had to forgive my mother. I had to forgive all of these people. And then I had to forgive myself, because I was allowing a lot of that negative energy to be pulled to the wrong areas of my life. And I was holding on to that rather than moving forward. So by forgiving them and not forgetting, there's a difference. I'm only forgave the rapist because I would say to myself, you know not what you do. I do not know your story. You may have been raped when you were young. I don't know. So, so you have to look at things in a different way. One of my other favorite quotes is by Wayne Dyer. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And when I started looking at things differently, I could see, and understand, well, I don't know what went on with them, but I'm going to forgive them for whatever they did. And my parents and anybody else I kind of thought that wronged me. And then also mainly forgiving myself for thinking I was less than. Just forgiving myself for maybe doing some wrong things, just forgiving myself, because I had to forgive myself, because once I was able to do that, I could move forward. Thirdly was the mindset. I've always had a positive mindset, but I really needed to be more consistent, because my positive mindset was really set into sales and to what I was doing on the outside. I was wearing that mask, but I wasn't really in that when I was alone. I would be negative and upset and hurt. So I really had to go deep and start looking at my mindset and think about what I'm thinking about and how can I work with that. And also not to judge other people, on what their thoughts were and not have the expectation. So there's a lot involved in mindset. And then in accountability was like, I couldn't always depend on other people holding me accountable, because they have their own lives.
Right.
Yes, it's great if you can afford a coach, but I couldn't afford a coach at that time. I couldn't afford to do things. So it was like, and honestly, when you're in that mode, when you're just learning, you don't want to tell anybody. There's this hide and seek in some ways, like, oh my God, I'm not, because I wasn't ready yet to let people know that I was messed up. And so, and I knew that would be a process, and I was fine with that. But, so I held myself accountable, and by making goals each day and checking things off, and then celebrating those little teeny goals. And then persevering is my last one, or actually second to last, persevering is keeping going. And what I did was I wrote out what we call a why. Why do I want to keep going? And I wrote it out so deeply, and so where, like, anytime I would read it, I would cry about where I was in that spot when I was 57 years of age and how down I truly was. And I wrote out in a whole page why I didn't want to ever be in that space. So whenever I was getting a little bit, normal and feeling, I just move on, I'd pull that thing out, right? Because I carry it with me and look at it. Oh, I never want to go back there. Don't do that. So it really kept me going all the time and not giving up, because I didn't have my mom anymore, because she had passed away also during that time. And, I didn't have a lot of support that I felt, again, I probably could have had it, but, when you're in things, sometimes it's like being in divorce, you don't always want to tell everybody, because that's a failure, right? So there's a lot of working parts. And then, of course, I always consider number 6 as a bonus, actually. And that's just gratitude and learning gratitude and understanding gratitude. But I live by those 5, especially every single day. Every night I will go to bed. I go, okay, do I need to acknowledge anything today that maybe I could change or what could do better? Do I need to forgive myself? Did I do something? Do I need to forgive anybody else? How was my mindset today? How was my accountability? Did I celebrate something? Was something good? And did I take a step forward? And I check those every single day. So I'm checking myself. And the wonderful thing is that it's, where at the time, 12, 13 years ago, this was a very long process, right? Because it was long list. Now it's very simple. I can whip through them, really easily in my mind. And
just mentally, or are you journaling about
I'm not a big journaler. I do write, but I'm not a big journaler. I write more poems and just write things out. Like I get things published in that way, stories, but I don't really journal. But no, most of it's mental for now, because that's all I really need. It seems to, I'm intentional about it and check it off.
That's great.
So, but that's what I teach and support women on, and everybody's slightly different. I mean, everybody has their own things and their own behaviors that's hard to talk about. And I find that acknowledgement and forgiveness is the top 2 hardest ones to get through.
given that you were willing to do the work and, continue to stay consistent and accountable, even though it was hard. And I think this goes back to some inner child work and some shadow work and, working through some trauma. That's hard. A lot of people are not ready or willing to do that. But what I want them to be able to see is, how has your life improved and changed in a positive way since doing that?
Doing the work, doing the work?
Yeah.
Well, first off, I'm not a people pleaser anymore. I mean, I like pleasing and making people happy, but I have boundaries now. When you have trauma in your life and as a child, let me just explain what trauma doesn't have to be rape. Trauma can be anything that has in your mind that's created some kind of effect on you, that's changed you for the negative. And so I don't want to, because some people's traumas can be very might be minor to me, but they're huge to them.
Right.
So I don't want that, but I just want people to understand that, because people might say, well, of course you had trauma, you were raped, or you had all this childhood stuff, but it's the little things that cause issues also. But usually it's caused when we're growing up. That's usually where it starts, because that's where our behaviors are learned. That's where things happen. And then if trauma does happen, we don't know how to move through them because we don't have the tools. So I learned, so trauma actually causes like the idea of fear of abandonment, people pleasing. You're constantly looking for validation outside of yourself. And fixing others. I mean, those are just some of the things. But if you're asking about that, if you have some of these things, you probably had some kind of a little bit of trauma somewhere in your life.
I think it's important for everyone to realize that's pretty much all of us. I don't think any of us get through unscathed. So it's
you can't. I mean, it's life, right? It's life. The pandemic is trauma for a lot of people. Now, some people's traumas are not as, traumatic as others. For me, I wasn't traumatized by it. I mean, because I've been through a lot of stuff, and my thought process is, wow, this is big, but we can move through this.
Right.
If we all work together. This is, my parents had pandemics, so it's not like it's never happened before type of thing, or other things are going to happen, but people are going to pass away. People die. That's the circle of life, right? But that causes trauma for a lot of people. So, I don't want to excuse the traumas of everyday life. So it's important to learn the tools and understand that this is life. And when I say do the work, it's really important to understand who you are and be willing to find out some negatives so that you can move forward, so that when things hit the next time, or trauma hits, or death hits, or a divorce happens, yes, are you going to be in a feel emotional? Absolutely. And you should, because that's being human, right? But you're also going to say, wait a minute, how now can I make this a positive? And not dwell on it. So it's learning the tools of and mindset and it's all habits, right? Honestly, everything is a habit, because we've learned really negative habits, and you feel like, oh, I just was divorced, I'm going to be angry and upset and this and that. When reality, if you could just sit in those feelings and say, why am I angry? Did you have play any part in this? How can I move forward? Instead of playing the victim. So it's really, a lot of it is getting out of that victim way of life. And so many people are stuck there. Yeah. But it's I'm not going to say it's not hard work. It is hard work, and it's an everyday work. I mean, we're constantly learning. Things change every day. What's going to happen, because that's actually a key word that I like to bring up. If change is inevitable. It's the only thing that is always happening,
Right.
right? It's every minute, every hour, life is changing. If we can learn to understand change and embrace change as a friend, and rather than fighting it, it's like aging. It's something that's going to happen to us. Death is something that's going to happen to us. Are I prepared for it? Maybe you read books about certain things and learn more things, or have a coach and understand things, so you're more prepared when these things do happen. But change is the main thing that's constant. And if we can learn to embrace that, you actually can enjoy it. And I now really enjoy change and pivoting and learning, because that means I'm growing.
Yeah.
Something good is happening to me. Now, I've never had, I think I've always really embraced age, honestly. I was one of those ones, my birthday starts the day after my birthday.
It's my birthday year.
But I've embraced it that way, rather than saying, oh my God, I'm turning 50. Oh my God, everything's falling apart. Because I always knew that it was inevitable.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen. So I might as well, I remember in my 30s, I might as well just embrace this thing, because it's going to happen to me. Yeah. And then the more I embraced it, the more fun I had.
Yeah. So
it's really how you position yourself and your mindset. And again, all these things work together, but it's a constant journey. And I actually really, really enjoy it, because that means I'm growing. I still work. And a lot of people say, well, you're almost 70, for crying out loud. Why don't you retire? I don't want to retire. Right. I'm enjoying myself. I want to grow. I want to keep growing. Could I retire? Yeah, probably, but I don't really want to. Yeah. So my whole thought brain is, what can I do when I'm 80 and I'm 90? If I'm still got it, I might be going to space like, the Star Trek guy did. Or,
William Shatner.
I want to be one of those.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just such a shame to waste any day that you're given. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
You've got another day. You can do whatever you want.
There's nothing you can, this is out of our control. And this is one of the things that I find that people really get fearful about. They're fearful of things that they cannot control.
Yeah.
Now, if they could just take the stance and understand, like, okay, go internally and say, wait a minute, I can't control that. I did everything I could. There's nothing possible else I could do. I can only control what I do and my thoughts and my emotions. And the more you can say this, the more you understand, the less stress you're going to have. Yeah. Because most of the time we cause ourselves so much stress and so much anxiety that it's bad for our health. And that's one thing that we can't get back very easily if we ignore our health. Yeah. And so that's really important. And stress, anxiety, and all of that plays a huge part of that. So finding the tools and discovering who you are, and growing and acknowledging and forgiving and, holding yourself accountable and persevering. It's just something you have to take the time to stop, to pause and do it, because everybody's on a hamster wheel. Yeah. Until you say, well, I'm going to stop and get off this hamster wheel, even for 2 minutes, 10 minutes, it will just continue on. You have to get off the hamster wheel. And like I said, it's just important to stop. Stop.
Yeah. And I think I always live by the quote, like Marie Forleo always says, that clarity comes from action. And I think, for someone listening, they may think, well, that sounds great. That's all, I really resonate with that. I like this approach, but what is like one takeaway, one action that someone could start to implement today, if they're listening, to kind of get on that trajectory towards change?
Honestly, and I just said it 2 minutes ago, is to literally be intentional about putting the phone down. A lot of people have kids, but finding to start with, because I believe in baby steps. Mm-hmm. Baby steps are critical, because if you have your goal way too high, way too far away, and you don't get it, you feel like you're a failure. Mm-hmm. When it's really lessons learned that you should have baby steps, is to really pause. I seriously, this is huge. If you could just take and start off at 2 minutes and pause with nothing else going on, sitting, doing nothing, which is hard to do, by the way. I want to, because and at first people are going to be like, pounding their foot and la, 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 la. And that's fine. Yeah. But you're taking the 2 minutes. And then eventually try for 3 minutes and then 5 minutes. If you can't, a lot of people say, well, I've got kids. I said, okay, fine. But there is the time when you go to the bathroom. I know some people can't get away,
bathroom, the shower.
Shower, most of the cases you can put them in the room or put them in their crib or do something. Shower time has always been my savior.
Yeah.
That's that time when you're intentional and you're just like, and that is just taking a breath. And the more you start to do that, because again, it's a habit, creating that habit of taking 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you will start to feel differently. You will start to go internal rather than external. And it's critical. And that's the first thing I would say anybody needs to do. They need to just pause and I say, and if I know people are going to say, well, I go for a run and I say, well, do you have your iPod on and your music on? Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. No, you have to have nothing. You want to go for a run? That's great. Because that does help a lot of people exercise, but I don't want anything out there distracting you but yourself.
Yeah.
And it's so important. But people are scared to do it. It's like frightening for them. It's like, that's why people say, well, that's like meditating. And I'm like, well, that's why I don't call it meditation. I call it quietation. It's just getting quiet with yourself and taking baby steps. Don't feel like you've got to be, and do them. You won't be able to do it because you're not a monk, you're not, so just take 2 minutes and of quietation every day and then extend it. And then pretty soon you are begging to get 20 minutes and, you'll find, and then you'll prioritize. You're going to find the time because it feels so good.
I love that. I was on a Zoom call with Glennon Doyle and she said, This is what she does. She goes outside for a walk, no headphones, no podcast, no music, no nothing. And she calls it fishing. She goes fishing in her own mind for whatever thoughts are going to pop up, what's going to come to her, and just kind of like sits in it and lets it come. And that's the only time that she's able to do that. It's just, just quiet.
It's just quiet and getting in nature is very grounding.
Yeah.
But anywhere, I like to tell people, you don't have to go for the walk right now. And because maybe somebody's 500 pounds and they can't go walking yet. Right. You don't know what the situation is. Just get in your own space, get in your headspace and just be quiet. And sometimes you won't like what you're thinking, but that's okay.
I love it. I think that's so important. And that is something anyone can do. I mean, there's no way you can't find 2 minutes on a daily basis. It's just not possible. You've got the time.
Yeah, everything is intentional. You have to prioritize. Yeah. You have to say, I'm going to do it, because it's amazing when somebody prioritizes something, it does happen. It's like that dress that you saw and the thing that was way overpriced that you shouldn't have and you wanted anyway. You find that money because you're prioritizing.
Yeah.
So you have to be good to yourself, but it's also worth it. And the journey is worth it. And the journey is continuous. Mm-hmm. But it's awesome. I look forward to, what am I going to learn today? What am I going to do today? It's like, I was excited about this podcast today because it's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to learn? How am I going to be, and just being open to things. And it's so exciting all the time.
It is. I agree. We're very similar. It's interesting. I've enjoyed this conversation. I feel like it's just been interesting to hear your story and to see that, things are working out, things are shining bright. And I love that. And I hope that gives hope to other people too, no matter where they are in their journey. Where can everyone find you if they want to work with you as a coach, if they want to buy your book? Where can they find you and all of your information?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to patricialove.com, that you can buy my book and also find coaching there. And also Amazon, just Seen and Unheard by Patricia Love, Amazon and Barnes and Noble.
Excellent. And I'll put this in the show notes as well, so the links will be there.
Awesome.
And this was amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I loved this.
Absolutely. I totally enjoyed it. You're a dream. You're great energy. Love the energy, girl.
Thank you.